The engine made that awful grinding sound again, then nothing. Complete silence except for the wind cutting across the empty highway. I gripped the steering wheel, staring at the dashboard lights that had just flickered and died. 20 miles, from nowhere past midnight with my phone showing 1 bar of signal. This was not how I'd planned to end my business trip. I tried the ignition again. Nothing, not even a click. The headlights had gone dark, leaving me sitting in complete blackness on a road that hadn't seen another car in the past hour. My heart started racing, not just from the car trouble, but from the isolation. I was completely alone out here. That's when I saw the headlights in my rearview mirror growing brighter as they approached. The vehicle slowed, then pulled up behind me with hazard lights flashing. I watched in the side mirror as a tall figure climbed out of what looked like a tow truck. Relief washed over me, followed immediately by wariness. Out here, you never knew what kind of help you were getting. Понравилось начало? Ставьте лайк, подписывайтесь, пишите в комментариях, что вас зацепило. The knock on my window was gentle but firm. I rolled it down halfway, peering up at the man standing beside my car. Even in the dim light from his truck, I could see he was ruggedly handsome in that weathered, capable way that made my pulse quicken. Dark hair with silver threading through it, strong jaw covered in stubble, and eyes that seemed to take in everything about my situation in one glance. Car trouble? His voice was deep, with just a hint of an accent I couldn't place. There was something immediately calming about his presence, like he'd seen every possible road emergency and could handle them all. Completely dead, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It just stopped running and won't start again. He nodded, then gestured toward his truck. I'm Jake. I run roadside assistance in this area. Mind if I take a look under the hood? I stepped out of the car, suddenly aware of how the cool night air made my skin tingle. My business dress had ridden up slightly during the drive, and I tugged at the hem self-consciously. Jake was already moving toward the front of my car, but I caught him glancing my way, his eyes lingering just long enough to send warmth spreading through me. Pop the hood for me, he called out, pulling a flashlight from his belt. I reached inside and found the release, then watched as he bent over the engine compartment. The beam of his light danced over the mechanical components while he examined, everything with practiced efficiency. Looks like your alternator gave out, he said after a few minutes. That's why everything died at once. It's not something I can fix roadside, but I can tow you to a shop in town. At this hour, I checked my phone. It was past 1 in the morning. Jake straightened up, wiping his hands on a rag. Nothing's open now, but I can get you to a motel for the night, then have someone look at it first thing in the morning. He paused, studying my expression. Unless you'd rather wait here for someone else to come along. We both knew how unlikely that was on this stretch of road. I looked around at the endless darkness surrounding us, then back at Jake. Something about him felt trustworthy, and I was running out of options. I guess that's my best choice, I said. How much will the tow cost? Don't worry about that right now, he said, already moving toward his truck. Let's get you somewhere safe first. I grabbed my overnight bag from the back seat while Jake prepared the tow equipment. The mechanical sounds of chains and hydraulics filled the quiet night as he worked. There was something mesmerizing about watching him move with such competence, his muscles flexing beneath his work shirt as he secured my car. You can wait in the cab if you want, he called out. It's warmer in there. I climbed into the passenger seat of his truck, immediately enveloped by warmth and the subtle scent of leather mixed with something distinctly masculine. The cab was surprisingly clean and comfortable, with soft country music playing low on the radio. I settled back into the seat, finally allowing myself to relax for the first time since my car had died. Jake finished securing my vehicle and climbed into the driver's seat. Up close, I could see the strong lines of his profile, the way his hands moved confidently over the controls as he checked his mirrors and prepared to pull back onto the highway. So what brings you out on this lonely stretch of road so late? He asked as we started moving. Business trip, I said. I'm in marketing, was visiting a client about 3 hours north of here. Thought I could make it home tonight instead of paying for another hotel room. I laughed, but it came out a little shaky. Guess that was a mistake. These old highways can be tricky, Jake said. I've been running calls out here for 15 years, seen just about everything. Cars breaking. Down, people running out of gas, sometimes worse things. He glanced over at me. You were smart to accept help. Some people try to tough it out alone and end up in real trouble. The way he said it made me curious. What kind of worse things? People getting stranded in bad weather, mostly. Last winter, I found a family whose car had slid off the road during a snowstorm. They'd been stuck for 6 hours before I got to them. His voice grew more serious. Out here, accepting help isn't just practical. It can be the difference between getting home safe and becoming a statistic. I studied his profile as he drove, noting the concern in his voice. This wasn't just a job for him. He genuinely cared about the people he helped. That realization sent a different kind of warmth through me, one that had nothing to do with the truck's heater. "What about you?" I asked. "What made you choose this work?" Jake was quiet for a moment, his hands steady on the wheel. "Started doing it after my divorce," he said finally. "Needed something that got me out of the house, kept me busy. Found out I was good at solving people's problems, at least the mechanical ones." He smiled, but there was something wistful about it. The human problems are usually harder to fix. There was something in his tone that made me want to know more, but I sensed he wasn't the type to open up easily. Instead, I found myself sharing more than I usually would with a stranger. "I know what you mean about needing to stay busy," I said. "My job keeps me traveling constantly. Sometimes I think I use it as an excuse to avoid dealing with my own life." "What would you be dealing with if you stayed home more?" The question caught me off guard with its directness. I looked out, at the darkness rushing past the window, considering how honest to be. The fact that I'm 27 and have no idea what I actually want. Career's going well, but everything else feels like I'm just going through the motions. "That's not uncommon," Jake said. "Sometimes it takes getting stuck on the side of the road to figure out what direction you really want to go." I turned to why. Look at him, struck by the insight in his words. "Is that what happened to you?" "Something like that." He glanced over at me, and our eyes met for a moment that felt charged with possibility. "Sometimes the best changes come from the unexpected detours." The conversation continued as we drove through the night, covering everything from favorite music to travel stories to childhood memories. I found myself relaxing completely for the first time in months, drawn into Jake's easy manner and genuine interest in what I had to say. There was something about the intimacy of the truck cab, the darkness outside, and the unexpected connection we were building that made the whole situation feel almost dreamlike. "Motel's just ahead," Jake said eventually, pointing to a cluster of lights in the distance. "It's not fancy, but it's clean and safe." As we pulled into the parking lot, I felt a strange reluctance for the ride to end. The past hour had felt like stepping outside my normal life, and I wasn't ready to return to reality just yet. Jake parked near the motel office and turned to face me. "I'll get your car unloaded and make sure you're all set with a room. Tomorrow morning, I can call my friend who owns the garage in town. He'll take good care of your alternator." "Thank you," I said, and meant it more than he probably realized. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come along." "Just doing my job," he said, but his smile suggested it had become something more than that. We climbed out of the truck, and Jake began the process of unloading my car. I watched him work, admiring the efficient way he moved, the strength in his shoulders as he operated the hydraulic controls. When he finished, my car sat in the motel parking lot, looking small and vulnerable under the harsh security lights. "All set," Jake said, walking back toward me. "You should be able to get a room, no problem. Place like this always has vacancies." I nodded but made no move toward the motel office. Neither did he. We stood there in the space between his truck and my disabled car, the moment stretching out between us like a question neither of us wanted to ask. "I should probably get that room," I said finally, though my voice lacked conviction. "Probably should," Jake agreed, but he didn't step away. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken possibilities. I could feel the pull between us, stronger now than it had been in the warm confines of his truck cab. Out here under the stars, with nothing but empty highway stretching in all directions, it felt like we existed in our own private world where normal rules didn't apply. "Jake," I said softly, then stopped, not sure how to voice what I was feeling. He took a step closer, close enough that I could see the desire in his eyes reflecting my own. "Yeah?" "I don't usually do things like this," I whispered. "Neither do I," he said, his voice rougher now. "But maybe that's exactly why we should." The space between us disappeared as he reached for me, his hands finding my waist and pulling me against him. I melted into his embrace, my body fitting perfectly against his solid warmth. When his lips found mine, the kiss was gentle at first, questioning, but when I responded by threading my fingers through his hair, it deepened into something urgent and consuming. I lost myself in the taste of him, the feel of his hands moving over my back, the way he held me like I was something precious he didn't want to let go. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "Your truck," I said breathlessly. "It's more private than a motel room." Jake's eyes darkened with understanding. "You sure about this?" Instead of answering with words, I took his hand and led him toward the truck. He opened the passenger door and helped me climb into the cab, then followed, pulling the door closed behind us. The sudden privacy felt intimate and thrilling, like we were creating our own secret world inside the warm confines of his truck. "Come here," Jake said softly, pulling me across the bench seat until I was practically in his lap. His hands cupped my face as he kissed me again, slower this time, savoring every moment of contact. I could feel the strength in his arms as they encircled me, the solid warmth of his chest against mine. My dress had shifted during our movement, riding higher, on my thighs, and I felt his fingers trace along the exposed skin with reverent touches that made me shiver. "You're beautiful," he murmured against my lips, his hands exploring the curves of my body with growing confidence. "I've been thinking that since the moment you rolled down your window." His confession sent heat spiraling through me. I shifted, in his lap, feeling his response to my movement, the evidence of his desire pressing against me through our clothes. The knowledge that I affected him as much as he affected me was intoxicating. "I want you," I whispered, the words escaping before I could second-guess them. Jake's response was to capture my lips in another searing kiss, while his hands moved to the zipper at the back of my dress. The sound of it sliding down seemed impossibly loud in the quiet cab, but I didn't care. All I cared about was the feel of his calloused fingers against my bare skin as he eased the fabric off my shoulders. The cool air of the truck cab made me gasp as my dress pooled around my waist, leaving me exposed in just my lace undergarments. Jake's eyes roamed over me with an appreciation that made me feel more beautiful than I ever had before. "Perfect," he breathed, his hands skimming over my silhouette with touches that left trails of fire on my skin. I reached for the buttons of his shirt, my fingers working quickly to expose the broad expanse of his chest. He was exactly as I'd imagined, strong and solid, with a light covering of dark hair that I immediately wanted to explore with my lips. "Your turn," I said, leaning forward to press kisses along his collarbone, tasting the salt of his skin and breathing in his masculine scent. Jake's hands tangled in my hair as I continued my exploration, his breath coming in shorter bursts as I discovered the sensitive spots that made him react. The power I had over him was as exciting as the pleasure he was giving me, creating a feedback loop of desire that was rapidly spiraling out of control. When he lifted me slightly to help me out of the rest of my dress, I didn't hesitate. The garment joined his shirt somewhere on the floor of the cab, leaving us both mostly exposed in the warm confines of his truck. The leather seats felt cool against my heated skin as Jake pulled me back against him. "I've never done anything like this before," I admitted, suddenly feeling vulnerable despite my desire. "We don't have to do anything you don't want," Jake said, his voice gentle but strained with the effort of holding back. "We can stop anytime." But stopping was the last thing I wanted. Instead, I shifted in his lap, pressing closer, making my intentions clear without words. Jake understood, his hands moving to support me as I positioned myself above him. The moment we joined together, both of us gasped at the intensity of the sensation. I had to pause, overwhelmed by the feeling of being so completely connected to him. Jake's hands steadied me, his eyes locked on mine as we began to move together in an ancient rhythm that felt both new and familiar. The truck cab became our private universe, filled with the sounds of our shared warmth and whispered endearments. Jake's hands never stopped moving over my body, learning every curve and hollow, finding spots that made me arch against him with barely contained cries of pleasure. "You feel incredible," he murmured, his voice rough with emotion and desire. "Like you were made for this, made for me." His words sent me spiraling higher, each movement building on the last until I was balanced on the edge of something wonderful and terrifying. Jake seemed to sense how close I was, his own movements becoming more urgent, more focused on bringing me to that peak. When the moment finally came, it crashed over me like a wave, leaving me trembling and gasping in Jake's arms. He followed, soon after, his body tensing beneath mine as he reached his own moment of release, my name falling from his lips like a prayer. We stayed wrapped together for long minutes afterward, neither of us wanting to break the spell that had been woven around us. I could feel Jake's heart beating rapidly against my chest, his breathing slowly returning to normal as we came down from the intensity of what we'd shared. "That was..." I started, then trailed off, not sure how to put the experience into words. "Yeah," Jake agreed, his arms tightening around me. "It was." Eventually, the cool night air seeping through the truck windows made us aware of our exposed state. We reluctantly separated to retrieve our scattered clothes, the process of getting dressed feeling strangely intimate after what we'd shared. "Should probably get that motel room," I said once I was dressed, though the thought of spending the night alone suddenly seemed unbearable. Jake nodded, but I could see the same reluctance in his eyes. "Room 12 is usually the quietest," he said. "Away from the highway noise. Will you?" I started, then stopped, not sure how to ask for what I wanted. "Will I what? Stay with me? Just for tonight?" Jake's smile was answer enough. He helped me gather my things, then walked with me to the motel office. The sleepy clerk barely looked up as Jake paid for the room, handing over a key attached to a large plastic tag shaped like a cactus. Room 12 was exactly what I'd expected from a roadside motel, clean but basic, with a large bed dominating the small space. But with Jake there beside me, it felt like the most romantic place on earth. We made our way to the bed without turning on the overhead light, relying on the soft glow from the parking lot filtering through the thin curtains. Jake pulled me into his arms again, and we picked up where we'd left off in the truck, taking our time now that we had privacy and a comfortable space to explore each other properly. The night passed in a blur of shared warmth and whispered conversations. We made our connection again and again, each time discovering something new about each other's bodies and desires. Jake was a generous and attentive partner, always making sure I reached my peak before finding his own release. Between moments of passion, we talked about everything and nothing, our dreams, our fears, funny stories from our pasts. I learned that Jake had been married for 12 years before his divorce, that he'd always wanted to travel but had never found the time, that he sometimes felt lonely in his work but found meaning in helping people when they needed it most. In my return, I shared things I'd never told anyone, how I sometimes felt like I was sleepwalking through my life, how I craved adventure but was too scared to step outside my comfort zone, how tonight felt like the first time in years that I was truly living in the moment. Maybe that's what this is, Jake said as we lay tangled together in the aftermath of our latest passionate encounter. Your wake-up call. What do you mean? You said you felt like you were going through the motions. Tonight, are you going through the motions? I considered his question, thinking about how alive and present I felt in his arms. No, I said finally. Tonight, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Then maybe you should listen to that feeling, Jake said, pressing a kiss to my forehead. Maybe it's telling you something important about what you want your life to look like. As dawn approached, we both knew our time together was coming to an end. Jake would need to call his friend about my car, and I would need to figure out how to get back to my real life. But lying there in the gray light of early morning, neither of us seemed ready to face that reality. I don't want this to end, I admitted, my fingers tracing patterns on Jake's chest. It doesn't have to, he said quietly. I mean, I know you have a life to get back to, but this doesn't have to be just one night if you don't want it to be. I lifted my head to look at him, seeing the vulnerability in his eyes. This strong, capable man who made his living rescuing people was asking me not to leave him behind like just another roadside encounter. I live 3 hours away, I said, but it sounded like an excuse even to me. I know. But I also know that 3 hours isn't that far when you found something worth the drive. His words hung in the air between us, heavy with possibility. I thought about my sterile apartment, my predictable routine, the life I'd built that felt increasingly hollow with each passing day. Then I thought about the passion and connection I'd found in Jake's arms, the way he made me feel alive and desired and cherished. Let me think about it, I said finally. This all happened so fast. Of course, Jake said, though I could see the disappointment he was trying to hide. I understand. But as the morning progressed and Jake's friend arrived to work on my car, I found myself watching Jake with growing certainty. The way he interacted with his friend, his obvious competence and reliability, the gentle concern he showed for my well-being, all of it confirmed what I'd sensed the night before. This was a good man, a man worth taking a chance on. When my car was finally fixed and ready to drive, Jake walked me to the driver's door. We stood there awkwardly, neither of us sure how to say goodbye after the intensity of what we'd shared. Thank you, I said, for everything. The rescue, the ride, I gestured helplessly, not sure how to encompass everything that had passed between us. Thank you for trusting me, Jake replied, both with your safety and with, he smiled, understanding my struggle with words. I reached into my purse and pulled out a business card, writing my personal cell number on the back. In case you're ever in my area, I said, handing it to him. Jake took the card, then pulled out his own phone. Can I get your number? I promise I won't be a pest, but I'd like to know you made it home safely. I entered my information into his phone, our fingers brushing as I handed it back to him. The simple contact sent the same electric charge through me that I'd felt all night. Drive carefully, Jake said, stepping back so I could get into my car. I will. I started the engine, relieved when it turned over smoothly. Jake? Yeah? Last night was... I paused, searching for the right words. It was the best night I've had in years, maybe ever. His smile was radiant. For me, too. I drove away with mixed emotions, watching Jake grow smaller in my rearview mirror until he disappeared, entirely. The 3-hour drive home gave me plenty of time to think about what had happened and what I wanted to do about it. By the time I reached my apartment, I'd made my decision. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Jake's number, my finger hovering over the call button. Then, before I could lose my nerve, I pressed it. Hello? His voice was cautious, like he wasn't sure he'd ever hear from me again. Hi, I said, suddenly nervous. I made it home safely. Good, I'm glad. I could hear the smile in his voice. Jake, about what you said this morning, about this not having to be just one night? Yeah? I'd like that. I'd like to see where this goes. The silence that followed felt endless, but when Jake spoke again, his voice was warm with emotion. I was hoping you'd say that. When can I see you again? How about this weekend? You could come to my place, or I could drive back your place, Jake said immediately. I want to see your world, understand that part of your life too. It's not nearly as exciting as a midnight rescue on a lonely highway, I warned. Maybe not, Jake agreed. But if you're there, it'll be exactly where I want to be. As we made plans for the weekend, I felt a sense of anticipation and joy that had been missing from my life for longer than I cared to admit. Maybe Jake was right about unexpected detours leading to the best destinations. Maybe sometimes you had to break down completely before you could discover what you really needed. Some moments change everything. A broken car, a stranger's kindness, a night that reveals who you really are underneath all your careful plans. Have you ever had an experience that completely redirected your life? What would you do if you found someone who made you feel truly alive for the first time? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one and want to hear your stories. And don't forget to like this video and hit subscribe for more real stories about love, passion, and taking chances. Turn on notifications so you never miss what happens next. Thanks for being here, and remember, sometimes the best adventures start with getting lost.